The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber. So I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at gruns.co. That's code podcast at gruns.co.
Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I am your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 188, recording on Monday, August 3rd from the home studios. I just got back from the TCO Performance Center where watched the first day of padded practice. And it was something, especially as it relates to the quarterbacks. I promise we will get into that here to begin. But before we do, two quick things. First, if you're new here and watching on YouTube, appreciate you being here. Hit the subscribe button, give us a like. It helps us out. We've had a ton of fun building this show. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or iHeart, follow us over there. You hit the 5 stars, give us a rating. I believe that stuff does something good. I'm not really sure what it does, but I feel like every podcast host, and there are 5 billion of us, has to say that. So there we go. The second thing is that we're going to take questions on this show. I always take those on social media at Alec_Lewis, at Alec Lewis Show. If you don't know me, I cover the Vikings for The Athletic, but we do this as a way for me to communicate directly to you guys. And I see a lot. I hear as much as I possibly can. So try to be as informed, objective, rational as we possibly can here on this show. But follow us over there so you'll see the call for questions almost every single week. Before we get into those questions, just going to go with, since the last time we recorded, what we've seen from the quarterback. So there was a practice Saturday without pads. The Vikings were off Sunday. And then I'm recording this on Monday evening. So the Vikings did practice today in pads for the first time. So that's where we'll begin. So Saturday, I just say top of the line thoughts. Kyler looked very sharp. Kyler Murray did. Thought that was probably the best practice that I've seen him have in a Vikings uniform going back all the way through the spring. Maybe in the first day out there in the spring, I remember he was pretty impressive, but just the ball placement seemed pretty good. The conviction in what they were running seemed pretty solid. The layering of the football, I mean, just the decisiveness, everything that I think anybody optimistic about the Kyler Murray signing would have wanted to see, kind of, a lot of it, not everything, but a lot of it displayed itself during that Saturday practice. And I said it, but just like he looked comfortable, he felt comfortable. His eyes with some of these passing concepts seemed to be in the right spot. He got from 1 to 2 to 3. He threw the football in rhythm. There wasn't a lot of dancing around in the pocket. Just decisive, the type of NFL quarterback play that you need on Sundays to be able to contend in divisions like the Vikings play in. So that was Saturday. I'd say J.J. McCarthy on Saturday, one of his more poor practices since he's come back this spring. And it was just, the timing felt a little bit off. Now, I and this is not even to cover for J.J. McCarthy. I just think there are some, on that Saturday practice in particular, J.J. McCarthy ran, a lot of these drills where the struggles happened. He took a lot of reps with the 1s, but there were some drills with the 2s where you wonder, is he taking an extra click because nobody's open, or is he just not seeing it? And I think, however your lens is on this quarterback competition, you're probably going to want to view that in a particular way. Because I don't get the practice film, makes it really hard to convincingly and with conviction, give you guys what my perspective of that is. But there's no question that Saturday's practice, just not a lot of comfortable completions, a lot of time in the pocket. A lot of his throws felt late or flat, and we've talked probably way too much on the Alec Lewis show about the necessity that it is for J.J. McCarthy to be able to apply touch on the football and get the ball up and down, kind of like a golfer would use his wedge to do that. So, yeah, Saturday was not one to really remember other than to learn from for JJ McCarthy. So that was Saturday. It was, I mean, I think I wrote this on Monday morning at The Athletic when I did like a risers and fallers of the first week. And I was like, if you, and we've talked about this a lot on the show, you guys have heard me talk a lot about just what the vision, if you're an optimistic person, of what the vision could look like for the Vikings offensively with Kyler Murray as the starting quarterback. You got a lot of creativity, you got some shotgun oriented concepts, you've got a lot of motions incorporated from some of the new staff brought in, most specifically Frank Smith, the Vikings assistant head coach. Like, I felt like Saturday, you kind of, I came away feeling like, me personally, I could understand and I could visualize what the what the intent of the Vikings offseason kind of looked like. Monday, I would say just not as crisp or sharp from Kyler Murray. And then JJ McCarthy, there were some positive moments, but the 2-minute drill to end it will stand in my mind from the practice. So I'd say Kyler, not most, but there were a lot of team periods where he took snaps with the twos, including a red zone 7-on-7 period where Kyler was sharp and he was decisive. He threw a ball to the back pylon to the left side. Ty Felton made a great one-handed grab. Ty's been pretty reliable, which has been good to see. And in that 7-on-7 period, Kyler looked pretty solid, whereas JJ McCarthy with the ones in that period, similarly just kind of slow. Whether that was because receivers weren't open or not, it's hard to say without reviewing the practice tape, but there was a throw to Justin Jefferson on the back line that just was like velocity, not much air under it, not catchable behind Justin Jefferson, and kind of bounce and hit the ground. In the 2-minute drill, it was not good for either guy. JJ took the snaps with the ones. The first play, he tried a slant to the right side, and it should have been picked off by Isaiah Rodgers. He dropped the ball. The second play, JJ tried an over-the-middle pass that was deflected by Blake Cashman, and then there was a false start. And then the third play of that 2-minute period sequence, JJ did throw an interception to the left side, so really bad. And then Kyler Murray took the snaps in the 2-minute with the twos. His first snap, it looked like a sack. He flushed out of the pocket, and then threw the ball away. But who knows? With Kyler and his athleticism, maybe it's not a sack. But for any other quarterback, with how it looked, that was a sack. And then, a couple plays later, whether the Vikings blitzed or not defensively, I'm not totally sure, but Kyler he heaved up a ball down the left sideline. There was not a receiver in the area. So that's how practice ended. 2 horns sounded, and you're like, man, that was a pretty poor end to offensively, to a practice. And I just say, like, I'm not, two things. One, I'm not going to overreact to the first day in pads. Like, I'll say this, and Pete Bursich tweeted me, so I think I can probably say this on the podcast, but like, I'm standing waiting for interviews after practice, and Pete Bursich, who we've had on the show a ton, you guys know well, he calls games as the analyst. He's on KFAN. He has his own YouTube channel, Eye in the Sky. Pete comes up to me. He's like, relax. It's one practice in pads. The defense is ahead of the offense, and as it usually is. And so, yeah, like I'd say, I put out a tweet on social media. If anybody reacts drastically, I think that's overdoing it. There were many opportunities 2 years ago with Sam Darnold to react drastically. I mean, the one that stands in my mind was the first Cleveland joint practices with Sam Darnold. I mean, it was brutal. It was terrible offensively, but the team did what it did throughout the season. So I'm not going to overreact like crazy, but I will say, in the back of my mind, and this is with my analyst hat on and less of just like the reporter hat on it, just my perspective from the outside looking in. from really the very beginning of this. Like I wondered throughout this practice. I've wondered throughout the spring. I wondered throughout like last week's first week of training camp. Do the amount of shuffling of first team reps with one guy, second team with another, first team reps with the other, second team with the other. They're facing the first team defense. Like the windows close at dirt. Like I just wonder if it's really, really hard for the quarterback right now to develop a rhythm. And if that, affects the entire offense and potentially has an effect on the offense come the season. Like I would say this, Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings staff, has leaps and bounds, miles and years and a level of understanding and depth of this thing more than I do. So they have said from the outset that they view this competition as it has the potential to bring out the best in both players, and by extension that will bring out the best in the Vikings team. And if the results do show themselves when the season occurs, then they should receive the requisite amount of praise for the way they handled this all. If the results aren't good, then I think it's going to open itself up to the person like me second guessing, which in the end probably doesn't matter very much. But I would just say there's a lot of positivity in a lot of spots, and you feel, at least for me, you just feel this the competition, the back and forth, the shifting of reps. You just feel like the looming nature of it, and so I'd say that just kind of has been in the back of my mind. So that's kind of where we'll begin. And I'm sure there are some of you who are like, I'm tired of the quarterback evaluation, but just want to give it to you as straight as possible. I'd say the last two practices, not very good for JJ McCarthy. Saturday was really good for Kyler Murray. Today, less so. But a lot of moving and shuffling. Like I tallied today, just like I did on Saturday, the amount of ones O versus twos D, twos O versus ones D. And you kind of need like a spreadsheet in Excel to line it all up and try to even out the types of reps, and they're all different and the concepts called, and so it's it's just a lot from that standpoint is what I would say. But with that, I do want to talk about our presenting sponsor. That's First Resource Bank. They are a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area, run by really good people. Tim Siegley, I mean, they were out at Canterbury Park on Sunday. Tim Siegley, he's got a horse out there. This horse, I mean, I don't know if we're talking Preakness vibes. I'm not really sure, but beyond that, Tim, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson, these guys have built a bank in the Minneapolis area that's really easy access with branches everywhere. They have a great online banking platform, and it's just run by really good people who are connected all throughout the Minneapolis business community. So I would say if you're looking for a bank to set you up well with people who are phenomenal people, can't say enough about First Resource Bank. All right, let's get to the questions. Let's not waste any more time. I want to give you guys the time. That's why we do this show typically at the beginning of every week. So I didn't script these. I don't know where we're going to start. I'll just pick them out of the crowd. I'll mention who asked the question, and we'll go from there. First comes from Rock NHL. Rock asks, how does Kyler look in comparison to where Darnold was at this point in camp? Different players, but overall grasp of the offense. It's a very good question. It's a question that is difficult to hearken back to my memories of that early Darnold kind of assimilation to Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings offense. But I would say, like, I remember that time period feeling very up and down. I think there was a point probably after the night practice with Sam Darnold where he started to kind of hit a runway and a smoothness just in terms of what it looked like. But I just mentioned that joint practices in Cleveland, the first one, and I can remember coming away from that practice and sitting in my hotel after in Cleveland, and I'm in Berea, Ohio. I'm sitting in some Marriott hotel, and I'm thinking like, man, that was really rough, and who knows what we're going to see. Eventually, Sam Darnold did seem to hit kind of a comfort zone. So I do think it's going to be worth watching, as this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, I expect some pretty extensive work for the quarterbacks in those two practices. And it'll be interesting to see how things progress into this weekend and into next week as kind of the first preseason game dawns. The other like elements of that question that I think are interesting. I mean, Sam Darnold came from I don't want to say I mean, it was more of a similar offense to what Sam Darnold operated with Kevin O'Connell than the offense that Kyler Murray is coming from with Drew Petzing and what Arizona did. And so like you guys might be, asking why. I just think from a verbiage standpoint, what Sam Darnold was exposed to with Kyle Shanahan was pretty similar. And then I think the way they teach how to read progression, specifically in some of the pure progression world, probably a little similar than what Kyler was most recently exposed to. So those two facets of it kind of muddy the evaluation. But I'd say from a thrower of the football standpoint, like I remember Sam Darnold's arm talent just popping off the page pretty early. I think there's some elements of that with Kyler Murray that definitely stand out. But I'd say as far as like I can there's like shades in my mind of Sam hitting like a 70-yard bomb one of the first practice days, and there hasn't been that level of just torch the defense over the top early on. So good question, kind of interesting to think back on it. But yeah, okay, let's see here. Colby Fisher, any noticeable flashes or plays from the depth wide receivers, specifically around Miles Price, Jay Sean Jones, and Dante Fleming in the battle of the last receiver spot? So great question. I would say of the group behind Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Juwan Jennings, Ty Felton has gotten most of the reps with that two group kind of as like the X receiver in probably the Justin Jefferson type spot. And I thought for the most part, Ty Felton's been pretty reliable. There have been, I mentioned the one-handed catch that obviously, it raises eyebrows when he makes a catch like that toward the back pylon in the red zone on a heater like he did on Monday. But I just, for the most part, even if it's like hitch routes on the outside, comeback routes on the outside, if it's over the middle stuff, it just feels like he's been in the right place. He hasn't dropped the ball really very much. So I think positive progression for Ty Felton. Behind him, I'd say there have definitely been some flashes from Miles Price. And I'd say the other one, Dante Fleming, will be a guy throughout the preseason games who I expect to get a lot of run. Dante Fleming, if you guys aren't in the weeds like this on the depth chart, he was an undrafted player out of Tulane. He's 6'2", 180, long levered type of receiver body. And I think he'll get some snaps and some opportunities over the next few weeks in the preseason game. And I think that'll be a spot for him where he's entered this stage of like what Tristan Jackson kind of proved to be over the last few years. And Jay Sean Jones has had some opportunities here at the end of some of these training camps. So Dante Fleming would be the guy to watch. Dylan Bell hasn't shown up a ton, probably not as much as I would have, thought I would have seen Dylan Bell, the undrafted receiver out of Georgia. So, but he's another one who I expect to get a lot of run in the preseason games. And if he succeeds in those, that's probably not going to be shocking to me either. David Edwards, how does the punting look so far, both the kicking and the holding aspects? So today was the first day there was really some team punt stuff. Johnny Hecker and Brett Thorson. Brett's the undrafted player from Georgia who won the Ray Guy Award. I would say, couldn't see or discern much of a difference between the two from a kicking perspective. There was one hold with Brett Thorson that I was watching where whether it was Will Riker got stumbled up by it or whether he hit the grass a little bit, like the ball kind of skidded out to the right. It wasn't a good kick. But I think that's more than anything, that's the question. That's why this is the type of listener we appreciate on the Alec Lewis show, the one who asked about the holding aspect of the roster. But I do think like that's an area where Johnny Hecker, you'd have much more trust in him given the extent of his career. But you guys know, just like I do, the importance of that punting spot and field position in this day and age of the game where kickers are making 65, 70 yarders like they are. So, something I will make sure to follow in the coming days. Let's see. Next question comes from Kay Delisle. How is Jake Golday looking? Other rookies that look primed to make impacts. He also wants a Ty Felton update, which we just provided. I'd say Jake Golday looks really, really good. I mean, if you come out to training camp and you're just looking at body types and certain guys, Jake Golday to be, a potential off-ball linebacker at his size. I mean, he is tall. Like, I introduced myself to him, funny enough, after practice today. And I mean, I'm 5'11 probably, but like Jay Golday, 6'4", and he is all of it. But I thought he's looked really, really good. The fact that they are already comfortable enough defensively to have him take some snaps and some reps on the edge, I think is pretty telling. I think it speaks to what I've heard from college coaches, even just like the speed at which he picks things up. So I think all signs pretty positive for Jay Golday. I would say Chuck Dimmings, like as much as he stands out for the social media videos of him jogging out to practice and the interviews that he did, he did an interview on Saturday where he said going up against Justin Jefferson, who he had a pass deflection against, he just viewed it as another nameless face. And it was like, well, that nameless face is pretty talented. So, but like he's electric. He's an electric personality. But he's looked really explosive out on the field. He hasn't shied away from anything. He hasn't busted coverages. Like that is the one thing I will say so far in this training camp defensively. Like there haven't been many guys running free down the field. It's not something you'd really probably expect the way this defense has been coached over the last few years, but it's definitely something that stands out, especially without Harrison Smith. But I thought Dimmings has looked really good. There's been a lot of Max Bredesen offensively, and he's been incorporated in a lot of motions, and I'll probably leave it at that so I don't get in trouble. But I would just say, Max Bredesen, I when they drafted him, and it was like they're taking a fullback at this point in the draft. Like I remember talking to people in the league, and I also remember talking to people who coached him, and they were very, very high on his physicality, but more than anything, like his intelligence and understanding. And I think that, the fullback is this rugged throwback, stick your face in the fan, wear a neck roll position. And rightfully so, it is all of that. But I think the most underrated aspect of that position, given the amount of jobs that they have to do and the positions that they have to align in and all of that, like the mental aptitude that is required for those guys. It's part of the reason why CJ Ham was as respected and revered by the coaching staff as he was in recent years. And I just say recent years because of my exposure, but like for a long time, it's because he was able to understand, conceptualize, and really do the jobs required at all different types of positions. So Max Bredesen, certainly. And then Caleb Banks, I mean, like I wouldn't say I've noticed a bunch of flash plays one-on-one. We haven't seen I don't know if we've seen any real one-on-one reps so far. So that'll be fun with Caleb Banks. But like, I would just say the fact that the Vikings defense has already had him working a little bit with the starters and then just, being next. I mean, the guy is an absolute freak from a body type and explosiveness standpoint. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a good feel, Cade. Ode at Simply Ode. Why was Damon Claiborne working off to the side? Yeah, the Vikings haven't clarified his specific injury, but I saw before Saturday's practice, he was doing a little stretching, and then today he was off to the side. But I don't, we'll see kind of over the course of this week, but the way they're treating it thus far wouldn't strike me as just an incredibly, wouldn't strike me as an incredibly long-term thing, but we'll evaluate that probably over time. All right, before we continue, another quick word from a sponsor. I want to talk about Pro MN Athletics. So we've talked about them a bunch over the last few months, but a couple of years ago, three guys came together, Kurt, Graham, and Tanner, and they're like, what can we do to enhance, improve, lift the tide of youth football development in Minnesota? So they created Pro MN. And what it is a company that really, I mean, they put together 7-on-7 leagues throughout the year. They have, training sessions and opportunities, including a winter academy. I believe they might have a fall academy this upcoming year. And they really Tanner Morgan, who played quarterback for the Gophers, and he's trained some of the best quarterbacks in the state. So if you have a son, or if you have friends who have kids who really want to play in middle school, high school, or even have vision to play in college, to learn from people like Tanner who played at that level, who know what's required. Just can't say enough about pro and men, and really what they want to do for football in the state. It's the sport that we all love, and pretty cool to be able to partner with those folks giving back. Next question comes from Nick Miller. How is the sunburn? How is the Jersey Mike's? I've had one Jersey Mike's. It was spectacular. I've really tried to cut it down because at this point in my life, eating the same thing, it's the weight really starting to put on. I'm seeing some tweets with my face in it. It's concerning a little bit. How was the sunburn? You can see. I mean, we're doing our best out here. I'm trying as much as I possibly can to avoid it. Let's see here. At Byron_R, were the pads popping between the O and D line? Who got the best of who today? Yeah, I would say the pads were popping. There were a good amount of runs today. And I would say Jordan Mason, there's probably going to be someone asked a question about like who looks different, feels different. I mean, I've been very upfront and open about how I still think Jordan Mason as a runner of the football is underrated. And more than anything, like people, I think last year saw the big body type and you wanted to think like as he's a rugged kind of bulldozer. But the thing that has always impressed me the most watching Jordan Mason is the vision. It just feels like he sees space and cutback lanes at a really impressive level. And so so he showed up to camp this year. He looks slimmed down. He looks really good. He's looked good in practice. It's really difficult to evaluate the run game, even in pads, because there's only so much kind of force and commitment to all of it. But I'd also say the way the Vikings are running the football schematically, it does look a lot, I think Jordan Mason, who came from San Francisco, where they do a lot of outside zone stuff, will have some comfort within that system. So Jordan Mason is stood out to me. I don't know how we took that question there, but we did. So hope that was all right. Let's see. Do any other players look noticeably different from last season? Yeah, I would say Ty Ingram Dawkins definitely just doesn't look. He just looks sleeker. Like he moves quicker, and they've played him in some interesting spots. Like there's like a 5 technique kind of opportunity. He's played a little on the edge, but I'll be very curious to just watch his growth and progression into year 2 because he's still a really young player. He was an interesting prospect coming out. I've said this before, but there were some people in the league who were like, if he stays and he has a good year at Georgia, which guys tend to do, maybe he kind of ascends into becoming kind of a, 3rd, 2nd round pick type. So, he would be one. Brian Vossen, tight end depth chart and usage. Bartholomew sounds to be taking the lead at 3rd tight end. Bredesen getting TE looks or non-traditional fullback usage. Could they keep Urasek and Bartholomew with tight end value increasing? Yeah, I would say, Gavin Bartholomew has caught everything, and his body type as a tight end, he's got some twitch to him. Like there is some athleticism, some reaction ability when the ball's in the air. He just looks like an athletic, explosive kind of weapon who can get down the field. I said this in writing because he was one of my risers for Monday morning in my story at The Athletic. I still want to see more from a run blocking perspective, and that will probably surface in the preseason games and in joint practices with the Ravens. But I'd say just from a pass catching ability, like when it's those red zone 7-on-7 periods, he's constantly in the mix, catching passes in voids and vacancies and stuff like that. So, I'd say Bartholomew. Urasek caught a pass today. Not a lot of Bryson Nesbitt kind of mixed in. And then Max Bredesen has been more of just your traditional fullback usage. And I say traditional fullback usage, that doesn't necessarily yeah, I know for you guys, it'll conjure the picture of like offset I formation, and there's stuff like that. I'm keeping it very vague on purpose, but there's also some alignments in other forms and fashions. So yeah. Um, let's see. Ryan Fitz, do you think Will Reichard could kick a ball from TCO to St. Paul? Um, it depends what the altitude would be on that day. I mean, St. Paul's not that far from TCO, but you don't want a guy over kicking and getting hurt, especially when it's Will Reichard. So that's just what I'll have to say about that. Let's see. Someone asked who is looking not good in camp. I'd say, I'll just stick to some of the fallers that I had in the Monday story. And I mean, I wouldn't say looking not good, but like Dwight McGlothern, who's been an undrafted free agent cornerback for years with this team, he just faces kind of an uphill battle from a numbers standpoint. You've got Chuck Dimmings, you've got James Pierre, who was back on the field for a little bit today, not full go, not with all team drills, but he was definitely back on the field, which kind of evokes that it was more of a short-term situation with him not practicing Saturday. But you've got, Dimmings, Byron Murphy, Isaiah Rodgers, Zamaya Vaughn, the undrafted corner. So depending on what the numbers and everything looks like, Dwight McGlothern, it's kind of a tough spot to be. I also in the fallers, I mean, Ivan Pace Jr. took some snaps with the starters today, and it's not like Ivan Pace Jr. as a blitzer can be a real problem. Like he absolutely can. It's more just, he's got a cap hit of 3.5 million. He's been on special teams, but he's made mistakes on special teams. I don't necessarily know if I would go as far as to say he doesn't make the 53 man, but I would just say, like, Ivan Pace, the shine that was that first training camp, I just don't kind of sense that a ton. So, that's kind of where I'd go there. Let's see. How does the offensive line look and how does the defensive line look? That's probably the most, we'll talk about quarterback nonstop, but Trevor at Meow Skerz, who asked this question, like it's probably the most important one, and the feedback is probably the most important. I would say this. I mean, if you go to training camp, one thing I would recommend you to do, would be to watch the O-line work. I mean, these guys are getting after it. They really are. I said it in the spring, and I reiterate it now. And it's not just my eye. I've had conversations that would verify that the work right now, the aggression, the physicality, the intensity is at a different level. Now, we will see when the season starts whether that shows up in the form of results. But I do think it is notable to talk about. And I would also say, perhaps besides quarterback, the most important update conversation, Christian Darrisaw has been active. He looks confident. He looks motivated. We'll see again, what it looks like come the season. But that development is it's incredibly important given what Christian Darrisaw can do. And then again, my mind goes down the road of what does it look like when Christian Darrisaw and Donovan Jackson are working double teams to the second level or are out on screens. These are guys who are aware, they have feel in space, they can move. So like I do think that's if you're a Vikings fan, I do think that would be something to get really excited about. Is just the idea of what that would look like on a consistent basis. Someone said a screenshot of a throw that Kyler made to Jordan Addison in traffic. Yeah, there was a throw in traffic today that Kyler Murray made. It was kind of a second level intermediate over the middle, Jordan Addison kind of crosser, and it was into traffic. And yeah, I mean, Jordan Addison almost got, it was clotheslined. It was bang, bang. It was a little scary watching it, certainly. And there have been, I would say, with Kyler, there have been some of those over the middle where you worry about, if it's live, what does it look like? Is the receiver getting blown up? But it's hard to gauge. And I would just say, I mean, it's going to be something to continue to evaluate throughout kind of what the quarterback, what Kyler specifically looks like over the course of this week and the next week. And we'll obviously talk about it, but I'm not going to, no problem talking about that. It was a throw that, like, as it was thrown, you're seeing Jordan Addison into a bunch of space with a bunch of defenders and you're like holding your breath because you know how good Jordan Addison looks and how important that guy is to what this team wants to accomplish. Let's see. Wander 5, how did Kyler look when he was pressured? I heard that the O-line broke down the 2-minute drill. Yeah, I would say like the first snap in the 2-minute drill, it looked like there was some breakdown whether it was breakdown protection or blitz, it did look like that got to Kyler a little bit and that affected him. And I've said this on the podcast. I wrote about this when I did my story talking to Kyler's former coaches last week and coaches and executives and teammates, etc. That interior pressure for Kyler Murray is something that that the Cardinals were mindful of, and that they, it's not that he doesn't see the field well, it's that when there is interior pressure, it affects his eyes a little bit and can muddy decision making. And so that was like I remember having conversations. I remember being in Arizona at the owners' meetings and having a conversation where it was like, the Vikings better be certain that the interior is solidified, and you can do that. Kyler can do some really dynamic things from the pocket, and that obviously places a ton of emphasis on Will Fries at right guard, Blake Brandell really at center, and then Donovan Jackson at left guard. But that's something I'm glad you bring it up, Wander. It's worth watching moving forward. Last word from a sponsor for today's show. We are going to talk about Aquarius Home Services. It's summer, and that means home improvement season. At Aquarius Home Services, your independent, authorized Connecticut water system dealer, they know that managing a household and all the expenses that come with it is no easy task. They also know how important having worry-free water in your home is. Your family deserves water that you can trust. Use it every day for cooking, cleaning, drinking, and bathing. That's why they are excited at Connecticut and Aquarius to share their summer trade-in and trade-up program. Trade in your old water softener and trade up to a Connecticut whole home water treatment system. The best part, you can get an additional $500 off on top of their summer sale prices. We'll get a couple more in here before we pop out. Swankinator asked, does Bo Richter make the job? Where is Theo Jackson's position with Jacoby Thomas, Jacob Thomas, and others? So Bo Richter definitely, he's had a pivotal role on special teams for multiple seasons now. The Vikings have always raved about his work ethic and commitment. I think from a pass rush standpoint, that's where, for me, speaking as an analyst, like I still think a signing with a more veteran option behind Dallas Turner makes a lot of sense. But Bo Richter, in terms of just the experience in the system, in terms of what he can do on special teams, it's hard for me to think that he would be an odd man looking out at least right now. Theo Jackson has taken most, if not all, of the first team deep safety snaps. And that's not surprising. I mean, Jacoby Thomas and Jacob Thomas, the two rookies, are still obviously working their way into the system. And Theo Jackson is a guy who obviously knows all of the ins and outs. So, I mean, I think it'll be interesting over the course of really training camp into the season, as the season progresses. I mean, what's the resolution with Harrison Smith? I think that would affect things. I think how quickly did Jacoby or Jacob Thomas take to the system? And then kind of you'd evaluate it from there. But I would say Theo has looked pretty good. Again, I mentioned the no busted coverages. He plays a role in that. So, yeah, just worth probably mentioning. Suits Bear, how are the centers performing in camp so far? I mean, it was first day of pad, so it's pretty tough to see. I really think I'm not going to have a good feel on what Blake Brandell is going to be capable every snap at that position until the season starts. But for now, it does feel like the Vikings are very committed to him in that role and in that spot. And we'll just see kind of over the course of the early part of the season what that looks like. And I would say, I mean, the Vikings have gotten a lot of stunts in recent years, specifically on passing downs. And that's an area that Ryan Kelly last year, when he was healthy, really thrived. Like his ability to kind of on the fly adapt and see pass rushers looping and specific stunts coming at him. Like, that was a strength. That was so much of what intrigued the Vikings in terms of signing him. So, and I think, if the Vikings see that amount of stunts moving forward, Blake Brandel being able to hold up in those opportunities is something that they're practicing, and it's something that's going to be important. But I think, like I said it before to the question of, I just love the directness of the question, which was, how did the offensive line look and how did the defensive line look? Like, I think like that is just so important. I can't over talk about it. You guys can't over ask about it. So I'm glad that was thrown in here on this Monday evening. That'll probably do it for the Q&A portion of the podcast this week. Appreciate you guys being here. If you're new, like we said at the top, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get your podcast. Support First Resource Bank, Pro M Aquarius Home Services. Their information is in the description. And with that, follow us on social media where you'll get some more live updates throughout the week. And we will talk to you very, very soon.